Live. Here we go. It's Friday. It's the Law Firm Marketing Show and Tell, and that introduction music was brought to you by Simon Marshall. Okay, he didn't know it was the exact music, but he picks a number, and there's some random ones that come through. So that was quite nice. That was a nice little introduction. Hello and welcome. So for those of you who are regular viewers, hello, Mom. You may notice our lineup looks somewhat similar to how it used to be. We're harking back to nostalgia. We have dragged kicking and screaming Charlotte back onto the webinar as this time a very special guest. Hello, Charlotte. How are you?
Hello, everyone. I am really well. Slightly nervous to be back in again. I feel like I've fallen out. You must all hate me.
Never.
But it's one of my very favorite things to be on about this Friday. So
I'm really surprised there wasn't a comment from Simon at that point. He unmuted, and I thought something was going to be said. You are always welcome here.
Too right.
So, Charlotte, as I say, is our special guest this week. But before we get started, let's meet the other two. For all his fans, by the way, unfortunately, Rich couldn't join us today. And if I watch the top of the screen, the viewing figures drop. But let's start off. Hello, Kat. How are you this week?
Very good. I am the only person wearing something sparkly in order to kind of celebrate Christmas. Simon said he was going to be wearing a Christmas jumper. He's overpromised and underdelivered. I'm Kat Collier. I head up Flair Insights. We are the research geeks who help you to understand your clients, your markets, and your competitors. So that's us in a nutshell.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much for that, Kat. And then the man himself, the Digital 100 TBD Marketing, Simon Marshall. Hello, Simon. How are you this week?
Doing good. Yeah. It's been a busy week. Been exciting. Lots of lovely projects going on, and thoughts are starting to turn to kind of, betwixtmas and that period when you get to actually properly enjoy, I think, Christmas, New Year. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be brilliant.
I don't know about everyone else, but, I remember the days when things actually used to slow down around Christmas. And probably around this sort of date, it would sort of start to peter off as people went, I guess, off to parties and improved their alcohol intake. That just doesn't seem to happen anime, unfortunately.
No.
So
we've had 6 or 7 pictures this week.
And
I always found that clients would chuck their pictures at law firms on December the 23rd for the deadline to be
January.
I tell you something. I do recall a notable law firm on the 23rd or 24th. I think it could have been the 24th, coming into marketing at about 10:30 a.m. and demanding a pitch be done. Which, as you can imagine, didn't go down too well because, this is marketing. It's Christmas. Most of the team were drunk.
Charlotte has got a solution. Charlotte's got a solution. She's going to tell you all about it today.
There we go.
Yeah.
So
Good.
after that segue, and because I still have your graphics here, which is great. So let me just give you center stage there, Charlotte. Hello, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a returning veteran. Can I say that?
You can.
On show and tell. But I am head of marketing at Pinnacle, and we work with top tier law firms in our consulting, software, and managed services. And we work in the spaces of finance, BD, risk, and BI. And pitching is one of our sweet spots where we are doing a lot of work at the moment, and we've just released our pitch management report, which hopefully we can chat a bit more about, because there are some really interesting findings. And as you guys said, I feel like, you know, the time of year that we are in at the moment, it's not just the fact that somehow miraculously this year nothing seems to slow down, but we are also running up to strategy review and budgeting season. So, you know, I think it's one of those really good combinations, really, because I feel like sometimes when you do the whole budgeting and strategy review at a time when that's not reflective of your entire year, or not reflective of how busy you can actually get, what you actually do is really miscalculate where your efforts should be. Yeah, I think it's a cool time to talk about pitching.
That sounds like a fabulous idea for this webinar. Let's do it. So who's got first questions for Charlotte?
I was just going to ask, I know you've launched your pitch management report this week. We have all read through it, I'm sure. And I just wondered what you could say are the kind of big themes that have come out, and who actually you surveyed in the first instance. So.
Yeah, so the survey was run among the UK top 100 firms. So we spoke to CMOs, senior bid managers, etc. So all the top dogs in bidding space. And we've run a survey with about 20 questions, and then they'd in-depth interviews with them. And I think what really struck me, if I had to summarize in one sentence, is people are under extreme pressure in terms of the load that they have to juggle. That said, people are really conscious of moving forward. So I feel like there is that space of, we are panicking because we are so busy and we have so much on, and deadlines are shorter, and the demands are higher. We have to put more detail into pitches, etc. And there is that point where you're like, okay, we are really busy. We are all these things, but let's look at how we can do better. And firms actually see or have a plan as to, okay, how can we manage this? Is this, coming down to reviewing our strategy? Is this coming down to reviewing the technologies that we use? Is it coming down to looking at who do we involve in terms of people? So I think that's the really exciting part, that, seeing that really conscious sort of forward thinking on how to manage things better.
It's interesting. I've got to say, from my side, marketing within law firms, and for the most part involved with the elements of the pitching quite early on, it was always something messy with so many firms. It was literally a panic, running around like headless chickens. Where's the data? What do we need? Who do we need to speak to? Yeah, I mean, that was probably, the last time I was heavily involved with that was probably about 6-7 years ago. So I'm hoping things have probably changed since then. I mean, these were firms that actually had no management. It was simply a case of it went off to BD and marketing, and it was, right, you deal with it.
Well, yeah, and see, I think that's part of the trick, because when you say running around, the whole running around is not a feasible thing really anymore, because people work hybrid, people are all over the place, and it's not necessarily just marketing who should be involved, because sometimes there are simple things which lawyers might be able to know better or tell you about better. So when it comes to experience, you need to that will be one of the fundamental things that you will be asked to include in the pitch. Lawyers' experience, it always changes. So if you don't involve them in that process, and if you don't make them accountable for updating their bios, updating their experience, contributing to case studies, etc., then that's when it becomes a tedious task for marketing, because suddenly it's your job to run around and try and manually hunt these people down to get information. So that is one of the things, and I think I can pull up the exact number, so I hopefully don't say anything silly, but bear with me. But less than half of the respondents train their lawyers, including partners, in pitch creation. So that does tell you something, that half of the law firms just probably don't even look at or consider that maybe it could be a more decentralized process.
So I had a friend who, sorry, Kat, go on.
No, it's fine. You go for it.
I had a friend who landed in a really, really big firm, like top 10 firm, having worked at a firm with me previously, and he was struck by quite how much decentralization had taken place. The new place, the associates would come up to him and say, right, so this pitch that we're working on together, so it was together, and they were like, I was going to take a lead on these things, can I just have your help with? And they were just like, this is amazing. They were so used to it being, as David suggested, just shoved and posted through the door of the kind of marketing team on the 23rd of December, and kind of did things that way. And I love seeing that maturity of that dialogue kind of coming about as well. But it's one thing is it's not, I think, Charlotte, it's what I got from the report is it's not consistent, is it? There seems to be a bit of a bifurcation for larger firms, how they're handling it, and maybe smaller firms doing things a bit differently.
Yeah, and I think without making it a plug, but I do think technology plays such a critical role, because especially in these large firms where we are talking about dozens of people and hundreds of lawyers, decentralization is a culture change. That's huge. That's an entire change management process. If you wanted to sort of retrain people and retrain their mentality and make them feel accountable, but if you have technologies which can essentially manage that process, so if you can assign people roles, if you can give them deadlines, if you can make sure that they only edit things that they are supposed to edit, it can become a really nice automated process without having to go through that entire change management around decentralization.
There's one thing that that lawyers used to lead on, and it's alluded to in the report, which is around pricing. Have you seen that kind of develop? And are all law firms in the top 100, do they have a formal pricing strategy that you've seen that's incorporated, or is it still lawyers actually leading on that?
So I think Mishcon is probably a good example from the report that I thought was really interesting, and that they moved towards a more strategic pricing approach. So they said that, well, actually what we realized is partners or lawyers don't necessarily know exactly what they bring to the table, and people naturally don't want to overprice their own work. So what they've done is actually said, well, let's just bring it home, bring it closer to the BD team, and let us do more. And frankly, Mishcon is a tremendously successful firm in the way that they do stuff. So I think that's a really interesting thing. I don't know if you guys have spoken to anyone.
It's probably last week's guest is somebody to reference, aren't they? So Vanessa Ugassi, who was talking about pricing your worth, and you almost need that objective view of how good you are, because people do undersell themselves. So I don't know if you've got anything to add to it.
Yeah, quite a bit, I suppose, inevitably. There's a bit of stratification there, isn't it? I think Charlotte said something a minute ago about that, that delegation maybe out to lawyers or people to be involved in this. I think those things are happening. And I think, David, when your experience was there previously, it would be happening in the department because it was easier to do it locally than it was to mess around with the kind of marketing team and the systems, right? So some of those things. And I think what's really available with the latest technologies that I've seen, I had a trial of the Pinnacle stuff this week, right? So somebody showed it to me just for the fun of it, right? And it's amazing what you can do locally at a kind of team level with and allow kind of permissions to take place that are probably really appropriate, Kat, for those people that are that I need to get a repeat business, a quote and an extension, like a new service or a new thing or a new version of thing or updating something. And I just think that finally touching technology, and it's not the only one out there, but you can have that balance of what needs to come centrally and it to be really clear for people in a tiered way. Like, look, this bid is over £1 million, this bid is over £250,000, this bid is under that. Therefore, you can primarily take a lead on it and do this yourself, or you can centralize it if it needs to, or it has to be centralized, if it's at the top tier. I think that's going to be really useful for 2022 going forward. I mean, let's be honest, Charlotte, the other pressure that I picked up on in the report is, and from stuff that you and I have spoken about, there's a war for talent going on at the moment with bid talent that something's got to change, right? Because try hiring ahead of bids at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we are seeing, and it kind of goes all full circle. So I feel like you can't pick out just one thing, because the talent for bid, I also think, or bidding teams or professionals, I think also comes from a place of the content that clients ask for in the proposals have changed. It's a lot more nuanced, it's a lot more complex. It's not tick box answers, but it's okay, give us actual percentages and case studies and backup whatever you're saying. Like, being able to deliver that's where real talent comes in. And our technology is really building on the fact that people need to be able to get to the first draft really quickly.
Yeah.
So, pitch perfect, that's literally the foundational idea behind the software, that people need to be able to get to that first draft, and that first draft has to be robust enough so it can, stand on its own feet. But that's when you start bringing the talent in to say, okay, let's go through this first draft and let's actually, look at, okay, how can we tailor this? How can we personalize this? What are the small little tweaks that need changing to make it a really, really punchy pitch?
I mean, what I saw the other day, I thought, Kat, that you'd have found really interesting was that on the demo, you can produce something pretty sophisticated within about 20 minutes or so, right? From a standing start. And I think that it changes the dynamic of when you have to have go, no go conversations, right? So there's go, no go conversations that would previously be ahead of, even starting with the process, actually can be done when you've got a bit of a document in hand. So you look at it and suddenly think, it's a bit thin on the ground, right? It's not going to fly, or like, this is not going to work. Really though, Charlotte, I think that's what I understand as to why it has to get the document up, get it in front of people, because then lawyers can have a sensible conversation about, come on, is this really going to stand up as far as the client's concerned? And actually, the converse is true. It emboldens people to go, no, wait a minute, like, we should be proud of what we've got. There's some good stuff here. Look at the evidence. Because unless you go start looking for what that internal evidence Johnny was showing me on the demo, right? You can go and tick these boxes and go and find these things rather easily. Yeah, frankly, I wish I'd had it 10 years ago when I was, doing that kind of stuff on a regular basis for a law firm. But
yeah, but see, and that's the thing. So, another issue, and, this is where the whole talent and turnaround and pressure comes from. If there isn't a centralized system that you can, search from, if you have to go into different folders and, people save stuff on their desktops and, all the information is somewhere scattered around, you just lost hours, days of trying to find the right information. And you might even, just not realize. And, what if the version that you have for that piece of case study or that bio is actually out of date. And
we used to see it on the directories front when we were on the other end of it, Kat, right? So you'd get 10 submissions coming from the same firm, and the submission would be related to a certain piece of work that's been done. But of course, it's got a privacy angle, so it would go in that way, and it would have a litigation angle and a whatever. But some of them, they forget to put confidential in. Just because human error would creep in. Yeah. So suddenly you report this case that's supposed to be completely unreportable or a matter, right? And it's actually down to whoever drafted the submission, missing out a piece of information. And with something I think that has that, it's the dream, isn't it, for a control freak like me on the corporate comms front. I think I can basically assemble that communications and have a flagging system that says to people, yeah, you can use this or not use this. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Sorry, Kat, I felt like you were going to say something as well.
No, I like that objectivity point that Martin Bragg, when we had him on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about legal directories and actually using those testimonials for your pitches, and do people actually use them? If that's fed into your pitch technology and you're having that go, no go with partners, and you can see that you have no awards and you have no rankings, but your competitors are in band one, then that can really help you to understand, right, okay, we're really busy. Is there any point in going ahead with it? Which is an element that I hadn't thought of in terms of this report. So,
well, yeah, exactly, and it's also the case of, or one of the things that came out from the report is we don't necessarily have a shared understanding of what a pitch is, and that's something really interesting to think about, because the very first section of the report will talk about how in some cases a pitch will be just a calling card because you have the relationship, because you've worked with them before, because you're doing something that where you're knocking on an open door, right?
That's called the David SAYCE, isn't it, right? Because you basically just waltz in, looking all glam and debonair, right? And then people just say, literally, where do we sign, right? That's it. That's called the David SAYCE.
I
go back and redesign the thing.
I wish it were that easy.
Yeah, but and I think that's the other part. So when firms are deciding, okay, is this a go or a no-go situation, I think you also need to think about, okay, but what kind of document do we need to produce if it is a go? Like, is it 2 pages, or is it 20, or is it 200?
It seems like a theme is the shorter the better is what clients want. And there was, I can't remember who it was. It may have been the person at Mishcon who said, we used to do videos as pitches, but nobody actually wants that. They want something that is standardized. And so this kind of more technical approach is what clients actually want.
I think
something we don't want to miss out as well. When you're building that thing, if you've done it, so instead of the go, no go, and then you kind of build this thing and get it up to speed. And Jim and I do this for our business, right? In a different software, but we kind of look at things and we have something. Most of those proposals we can get ready in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? And we have a look at it. And then I think, Kat, you do that gap analysis thing, don't you? Where you sit there and go, wait a minute, like, what have we got to ask the client to get us to what Charlotte just said? What document do they want? What do they need at the other end? And sometimes we look at the thing and think, that's 27 pages long. This person's not going to read that. Like, but it's only by having the thing to edit in the first place, isn't it? You then just sit there and cross out, right? They don't care about those case studies. They don't care about this, and it's really interesting. We've had some lessons. We've lost a few pitches along the way just by including the wrong materials in there. And it's such a shame, but it's fast forwarded. We found those, we need more info before we can give you a price conversations with people as well. When you've got something that you can look at and think, look, we feel as though we need to kind of manage that. Is that one theme then, that they're going to be shorter and shorter, do we think? I'm asking Kat because she sounded like she was. Were you picking up from that?
That seemed to be a theme of the report, that pitches are taking longer to produce. But so Pinnacle ran this 4 years ago. 4 years ago, pitches were a lot longer, but they didn't take as long to produce, and now they have to be much more tailored. Partly, I think, Charlotte, you picked up on this before about the whole ESG angle, where they are asking very scrutinizing questions, and then you have to go through those compliance loops to evidence how you're committed to their ESG. So I think, I can't remember who it was in the report who was talking about diversity and inclusion used to be, do you have a policy? And now it's, what metrics are you using and what are you going to be doing in 3 years' time? And so yeah, I feel like, Charlotte, you may be able to expand on this, that the questions used to be quite generic, but you could attach your policy, whereas now the questions are very specific and you need to do your homework to give the half a paragraph that they want. So,
well, yeah, exactly. But then, that goes back to having content sort of ready to go. So, when firms pick up on, okay, this is a consistent theme, or, we are hearing stuff, let's think ahead, and let's, try and, see, can we produce some materials which put us ahead, and, sort of we can use it as a drag and drop. But yeah, no, it is becoming more and more complex. And I think the trend is, or what people are anticipating, is that it's just going to get even worse. So that really, that's really the thing which screams for action now, in a way. So, if we already know that it's bad and we expect that it's going to get even worse, and, one of the things is, and we didn't go into it, but I think more firms are being asked sometimes to pitch for the same thing.
I was about to ask a question about that as well. I think for Kat and David, have you because you both obviously own your own businesses as well, have you asked about who else is pitching? And so the subsequent question is, have you kind of then said, actually, we're not going to pitch as a result of that, when you kind of hear who else is going for it?
Go on, Kat.
Yeah, I do as a standard ask who they already use or who's pitching as well. And people tend to be quite open on the strengths and weaknesses of the competitors. You could be surprised if you ask the question, what people will reveal. Yeah, there have been a couple of cases. I mean, Flare Insight is a more bespoke UK agency, but we could come up against those outsourced providers who use people in other regions. And you can get a flavour of what kind of pricing they would be, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can start to think, well, is this worth our time or not, and whether to go for it. Yeah. David, your role is different to mine, so I don't know what you think of it.
Mine's a little bit different. So it's rare I end up going into a formal pitch battle with other people.
Because of the reasons we said earlier, right?
Exactly. People just come to me with a large bag of monies and go, we don't know what we want, but do it. And they just throw it at them. However, I mean, whenever I'm doing that discovery, that onboarding, I always ask about who is currently there, who is being used, the experience with them. On a very few occasions where I have gone up against others, I have asked. I think, as Kat says, there's no harm asking. And to be honest, it hasn't changed, much in the way I've then presented.
We've asked for larger agencies to be brought into the shortlist, because we want them to see what they get bangs for the buck with us. We're not as big as those guys. And then I think that kind of helps sometimes. But then if we find that there's other people who are more like us or our model, we'll just say, actually, you've got two of those covered already, and we're not going to put the effort into this one because we think you've got some really good choices there, and we think we're just adding a third thing, which means we're just competing on price effectively. And frankly, we're probably not going to win that game, right? So I suppose we've been quite lucky with our model and what we're doing and how good the gang are that I work with. But yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of conversation. I think the firms, Charlotte, probably needs to do a bit more of that, and finding out who else is kind of up for it, because we've seen too many stories in the lawyer, Legal Biz and Legal Week saying, 15 firms are going for this pitch, and there's 3 being appointed. If you're going out at a certain amount of effort, Kat, you were talking about earlier, the specificity of those answers you got to give under some of those RFPs are just huge, and the amount of man hours it takes to answer this question. So some of them will go into the log, won't they, and you'll use them again, but some of them really are specific to the client. And my favourite ever answer, just very quickly, we asked a writing agency if they would bid to do the website for us. And we asked them if they had any other law firms, and they were conflicted. And they wrote, mind your own business as the answer to that question.
Sorry.
Well, it's just a lack of, they just don't see it as a conflict. And law firms, we were asking them a law firm question, the kind of question that law firms get asked. But they're like, we're a writing agency. What are you talking about? Mind your own business. Brilliant. What a great response.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think in this whole context, what we really need to, again, step forward towards is pitch tracking or, proposal tracking. And I feel like that's one of the areas where law firms are great, right? So, in our survey, it comes out, I think 97% monitor their win rates or, look at how their pitches are doing. So that's amazing. But I think we need to dig a bit deeper down, because some of the conversations that I had on the side, it's very much the case of, well, we track pitches or, we look at win rates, but we don't take it that step further to say, okay, but what is, what does a BI dashboard look like, which says, well, okay, this is the region that you pitched in, this is the practice area.
The pitch coming in for Cat right now, yeah.
This is how popular we all are.
Literally straight out of comments. And
if you're on this show, your phone will ring before the show even finishes.
Sorry, Charlotte.
Lovely. No, that's okay.
Well, I think you've lighted on something really insightful there, I think, Charlotte, as well. But I wonder whether one of those metrics that's not tracked at the moment is the BD team said we shouldn't go for this pitch, and we still went for it anyway. And did we win or lose that pitch? Right. And what was the headline rate we were winning that work at afterwards? Because I still feel, sorry to say it, guys, and I love the legal sector, everybody knows, but there's still a lot of those conversations going on where BD is saying we really, really, really shouldn't be going for this. And then you go for it anyway, and you either win it at the wrong rates or we lose it. And it's to David's, pre-Christmas pitch point, it's an invisible cost, and instead it's not an invisible cost. There is a cost to that. That time should be spent, Charlotte, shouldn't it, with BD guys out winning the kind of business they should be doing instead. Yeah. And I just think that I'd love to get to a place where we can quantify more of that as well.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing, and there are so many firms who track their pitches, but they don't. And it's really simple, right? Every firm will have a really good, in-house IT team, and I'm sure that the marketing team can do the puppy eyes and ask for a BI dashboard to get it up and running. Or we have it, built in with Pitch Perfect, so we do it for our clients. But you can visualize the whole thing, and you can say, okay, this is the region, this is the practice area, this is the value, this is how much we won, how much we lost. So there's some really cool stuff that you could do, and I think that's where the whole strategy review comes in. Because you can review your strategy and say, oh, this is how we should do it, but what is it that makes you certain that this way is the right way? And I think that's...
So, analyze first is what you're saying. Like, capture that data first, analyze it, and then make better decisions about where you should be focusing your BD efforts, right? That's what I just heard.
Yes, but see, this is where I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg dilemma, isn't it? Because you have to get pitches out that you can track, and then you will eventually have the. So it's more just. Yeah. I think we are moving into a world that changes so quickly that a strategy review every 2 years, it's just not good enough. It's just it's too late. If a firm reviews their pitching strategy every 2 years, just think what happened the past 2 years. Right? They just missed this gap. That would be crazy. So yeah, I think it's more just it's a continuous improvement process, really. I think, and it's getting marginal gains or small wins. Okay, put something in place which will make your life a little bit easier. Put something in place, be that a process, be that a piece of technology, be that a new person, who will make your life easier, or will add something to that process, and step by step, and just make sure that you review that strategy regularly, and act in line with data.
I talked to you about adoption rates as well, because in the report it says all the firms that were surveyed that responded over 300 million in revenue, all of them have some form of pitch technology in place. Where are we in the adoption kind of arc of the industry? Maybe the top 100 firms adopting pitch technology. Are we there yet, or?
Look, I think the firms who are doing really well, and the firms who manage to take some load off their people, have something in place, right? Or are proactively thinking about getting something. There's no way out. And I think that's, one of the conclusions from the report. There's no way out. And there is a very clear correlation between revenue and pitch technology use. So, it's really simple. But, one of the things that we are doing on the back of the report, and, this is, if anyone is watching and is interested, we are actually going back and looking at every single response and analyzing it out in detail to say, this is your pitch volume per lawyer for your firm. This is your revenue. Let's compare you to a firm with a very similar profile and see, how they are doing. If this is your pitch volume per lawyer, and there is a significant gap, or you have that same volume, but there is a significant difference between your revenue, then that's something really interesting to talk about and think about. So we've extended that. Initially, it was obviously as a thank you gesture to everyone who responded, but because it's so burning, because it's such an obvious need, we've extended that to any law firm. So if anyone feels like filling out the exact same survey that we did for the report itself, we have consultants who will go back and profile you and benchmark you against the UK top 100. So
one of the other things I think in terms of that adoption rate is that I think there's, beyond Pitch Perfect, there are some scalable products as well out there for smaller businesses as well. Because I think the assumption is at the other end of the market that it's just something that would be beyond you until you got to a certain size as well. I don't know how far down it reaches, Charlotte, in terms of the scale of organisation where it makes economic sense to have it deployed for Pitch Perfect. Forgive me, I don't know that bit. So, but I think if I were a smaller business as well, I wouldn't immediately assume that I couldn't go with it. I mean, there are other options that might be the right thing for a very small law firm, or a firm that's kind of growing at first as well. Absolutely.
And look, there is always an argument for people. Maybe it's a people question, maybe it's a process question. So I'm biased because I like legal tech, right? But there are always other options. I think to what you were saying, it's more just the case that people sort of move ahead and think ahead to say, okay, but what's next? Because if you're really successful at pitching, you're going to grow, right? So what's the next stage? And I think it's just being conscious of that evolution, if you like.
Yeah, I guess we're deploying something at the moment at a much smaller scale for a much smaller firm, which is basically form based on the web with an API, David. Guess what? It drops into the back end, prepares a proposal, sends it over to them, and they can sign it off and pay for the flipping thing. But it's at that point in the market where that margin and not having to have a solicitor fill in that bit for them is the difference between profit and no profit. As in, there's some products out there in the legal market now that are becoming increasingly commoditized. So that makes a perfect sense to kind of start out with something where people tell you that information at first. But I do think it's an exciting time for people who want to make better decisions around what they're doing with their BD team, Charlotte. Just the stats that you can get out the back of these systems and what you can do with it as well. So is it any law firm can come to you with that request to benchmark?
Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
We've had firms, and you know what? We've actually had firms from the US as well. come back. So we will repeat the study in the US, but I think people just want to know where they sit, and I think that's another data point for you. Don't try and position or reinvent the whole. If there is data and someone is offering it essentially on a golden plate, just take it up. So benchmark. I mean, you do the same side with the digital 100. Really just giving people that data-driven or data-backed positioning of, well, this is where you sit. If you want to do something about it, that's a whole different conversation. But don't try and just sort of guesswork of what other people are doing.
I think that's right. I think that allows people, I think, to kind of decide what they're going to do about things when they know where they sit in the first place. Then it allows them to make a better decision about what they're going to do about it. Kat, you and I were talking about the adoption of some other technologies, weren't we, as well, that we spotted this week. There was I think some of it you've got to take a bit of a chance though if you're going to be first, right? Haven't you? But some of it you've got to kind of look at and think, well, someone else has done that and it's clearly working, and then you want to know the data that sits behind it to know how well it's working. And then it's a bit like it could be anything. Online advertising for your services. It could be the VR example, Kat, that we saw the other day on that website, which was beautiful. But does it convert? Does it actually make any difference? Maybe it's Brian's poetry on the
yeah, Adelshaw Goddard. Yeah,
Did you guys see that this week?
Yeah,
I know you did. But I think Charlotte or David, did you see that?
No.
You should explain. Kat. You sent it to me rather than the other way around.
So Adelshaw Goddard have commissioned poets to come up with poems that are kind of related to law, but not completely related, with videos, and it's got its own. They basically have created an analogy between poets and lawyers and how they both play with words. And they've got a series of videos, kind of 7 or 8 of them, and it's being pushed out at the moment. And it was just arresting in the way that it's been put together. So it's Brian McCready, who I used to work with, who I can imagine, I don't know if he either came up with the idea, or he had the balls to go with it. And that's something that I love, that it was actually, and that isn't necessarily technology, it's just another way of pitching yourself. So
law firms having in-house poets. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. I just think it's a lovely idea. But the idea of like doing something, but the next person comes along and says, show me the data, like, what did it, and having some confidence. I think if you're going to be first mouse, right, then, or early bird, as it were, early bird, not first, early bird, then you've got to kind of just have the confidence to go with it anyway. And then, those people don't want to be second mouse instead. Do you know what I mean? For early birds, catch the worm, second mouse gets the cheese.
Yeah. Was it the person at Clyde & Co? I can't remember who it was who said where they see, I think this is where their pitch management system sits at the moment, but potentially, Charlotte, it might be where they go forward, is that firms can start identifying where that pitch actually came from. So what was the top of the funnel stuff that informed it? I don't know if you see that as a kind of the future for that technology. And so firms can actually really analyze, okay, so it was this blog post that got them interested, then it was this meeting that actually got us into the meeting with them. I don't know if you can see that as part of your module, or if that's something that could be coming up.
And I think that's so exciting. That would be amazing. But that's really, for me, I think that's the validation of the entire marketing department then. That's so much bigger than just pitching. So I think, if something like that could happen, that would be brilliant. But I think there's more than just the big team needed to make that happen.
I did something similar with a firm, and it was this was years ago, but the amalgamation of all the different types of data to pull this through, to try and give some idea of this golden thread of what was happening within the business, where it may have begun, what the outcome is or was. It's interesting.
I think that data's got some challenges to it, hasn't it, as well? Because that attribution model that takes place. Charlotte's right. It's so important to kind of get. It might be, but it's the attribution that gets you maybe over the line. But all the stuff that got you to make that decision, is it where I get there? I don't think it always. That's that Ogilvy quote, isn't it? People don't say people don't do what they say they do, right? There's that stuff that goes on beforehand, and I think loads of it's subconscious, Charlotte, as well. That you just don't know what got you to think. Why do we favour, David SAYCE over any other option when it comes to digital marketing? Is it the quiff? Is it what is it, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. And all the stuff which happen between people.
Exactly.
I think you did this, Si, where you actually managed to somehow quantify the value of taking people to the Royal Ascot. Is that right?
Well, working backwards on the sex plan. Working backwards on the sex plan we did once, because what somebody thought was a sex plan that they needed actually turned out to be a CRM relationship of one individual who gave 98% of revenue, and I just said that's a key account program, and you need to go and find that person, ask them if they've got another buddy who does the same thing, and can they? So if that person wants to go to Wimbledon or Ascot, then flipping take them, right? But the right marketing strategy comes from, as Charlotte's correctly said, looking at the data properly. I think we need to see a bit more of that in the year ahead, and I know David and I have been calling for it since the last 12 days of Christmas, but the idea that people would invest a bit more in spending a bit of time with the data, poring over that. I know that's what Cat almost does for a living and spots these gaps and these opportunities, but I'd implore anyone who's thinking about their budgetary stuff for the next year, Cat, really to go and read Charlotte's report, because I just think it's so eye-opening in terms of what everyone else is doing. There's a Phil Fisher quote on there, Charlotte, isn't there? Basically says, if you're not doing this in 2 years' time, you're nowhere. Like think about that for a minute. All the stuff you're going to go for, that is a big problem. If Phil Fisher's not even in the top 10, right? And they're saying, if you're not doing this in 2 years' time, we're going to be more efficient than you. We're going to be able to price better than you and do this more efficiently than you. That is a big problem for the next 25 firms, I think, really, all the way down to at least 50.
And the guys who only review their strategy every 2 years.
That's a mistake in itself.
So true. I mean, that's back to that Simon Hill point I've shared with you before from VWV, who says, no, Simon, we have a 3-year plan with a 1-year rolling plan inside of it, and they both roll. And anybody who achieves something in the first month and thinks they can just sit back and relax for the next year, he said, you just get a new plan. that's you can't sit on your laurels about it. So, and I was like, okay, the other thing I'd say is just if you get a chance to, in late December, early January, it will be slightly quieter, hopefully on the pitch front for people, hopefully on the marketing front for people. Please do spend a bit of time looking at some data sources, and maybe David, on the thread for this video afterwards, we could chuck in some resources that people could go and have a look at, and some things they can read as well. But I think thinking about that now ahead of financial year end and the budgetary period, Kat, I think it's really important to dwell with that data a bit and think about what it means for your own business as well.
Yeah, and help convince others, because data always does help convince others as to the path that you want to choose. So
true, isn't it? It's not me. It's not an opinion, right? It's narrow banding. There's option A or option B, and they're both informed by data. Which would you like to do? Partners are then able to say brilliantly internally, right? No one's going to drop me down the equity for making a decision based on A or B, because the data told me it came down to a binary choice. And
pretty much every meeting I have is backed on data. We assume this. We're going to do it because here's the findings.
That's what Alex Lowe says, isn't it? If you walk into a room and go, I think that, he says that it should be, I know that, or the data tells me that. He's like, so informed when you're working in Big Four and other places now that you've got to go with that attitude as well. Interesting.
Right, I think we are about up to just a quick. Oh, look at that. All 5 of the old team together. I really hope he's liked and subscribed. Anyway.
I'm just glad to see that the show is live.
Yes, we did have technical issue. Well, actually, it was LinkedIn who had technical issues last week. It wasn't us. Charlotte, thank you very much for coming back. You are always welcome here. So let's have a think about what we might do in the new year. Drag you back in, at least for a special or two. In the meantime, if somebody wants to get in touch with yourself, with Pinnacle, what are the best ways to do that?
I am on all sorts of social media. LinkedIn would be your best call.
I've still got your old graphic.
Oh.
I just couldn't delete it. What can I say?
Also included. Thank you.
We just hoped she'd come back.
Yeah, and then Pinnacle. It's info@pinnacle-oa.com. If you want to get in touch with us, or our website, and you're always welcome to email me as well, and I can point you in the right direction. It's charlotte.tuckett@pinnacle-oa.com.
That's great. Thank you very much. Right. Any last words from anyone? Because I know a few of us have to dash.
All good.
Are we here next week, David? Or are we dashing?
You said,
Christmas jumper special.
Charlotte, things haven't changed.
We
we're
will
so
confirm.
well planned.
We will see.
We will confirm. We will confirm.
We shall confirm what is happening next week, and who or if we have somebody on the show, and who or if or what the topic might be.
Excellent.
It's exciting, isn't it? It keeps the suspense going. Yeah,
Gives you a bit of FOMO.
So very quickly before we go, any last words from Kat, Simon?
Thank you, Charlotte. You have been missed. So
Yeah.
anytime.
Thank you guys too. Definitely. I'll come back again. But thank you for having me.
We need to get that in writing. For everyone watching, I hope you've enjoyed the show, and we should hopefully see you again next week. Until then, thank you very much. Cheers.
Waving.